Hello, and we are back. So, what you should have noticed was these two sentences, let's eat grandma, compared to let's eat grandma, right? Commas save lives. This first sentence is basically saying, we're cannibals, we're going to eat grandma. Like, let us eat grandma, right? The second sentence is very different, saying, let's eat grandma. It's like an invitation for you to eat with your grandma. Shout out to the grandmas out there, okay? And the grandfathers, all family is important. But that's really important. Commas really do save lives, right? And this connects to parentheses and exponents because if you look down here at this sentence, it says, what's the difference between a group of negative 3 squared and the opposite of 3 squared, right? Is there a difference? Yes, there is a difference. Think back to when you had 7th grade math last year, right? This might ring a bell, right? Somebody's revving out outside. They're excited about this negative exponent. This negative base stuff, right? So here we have a base that is a group of negative 3, and here our base is 3, and with a negative sign outside. Let's see. So you learned last year that a negative sign means what? Means the what? Starts with an O. That's right. It means the opposite of some value, right? So this group of negative 3 squared means what? This means the opposite of 3. So you have that as a group, right? The opposite of 3 squared. Right? And if you even break that down further, how do you get the opposite of 3? Right? You have 3. How do you get the opposite of that? How do you get the opposite of any number? You multiply it by negative 1, right? But it's squared, so you have 2 groups of that, right? This is what that looks like, right? Negative 1 times 3, a group of that, and negative 1 times 3, which gives you what? Just negative 3 times negative 3. And we know a negative times a negative is equal to a positive 9. That gives you a positive 9. But if your base does not have parentheses with that negative right there, pay close attention, peep game. Mr. Lyons putting you on right now, right? And again, this is the trickiest part. Up here, you guys, I'm sure, are fine with this. But this is one of the trickiest parts about this lesson here. And this is the opposite of 3 squared. That's what that's saying. This is saying the opposite, very similar at the beginning, right? But there's no group here. This is saying the opposite of 3 squared. Do you see the difference here? See how let's eat grandma and let's eat grandma, this difference here with the group and without a group? Because this is showing right here. Well, opposite means the opposite, opposite of. Opposite means what? How do you get the opposite of something? You have to do negative 1 times the opposite of 3 squared. Well, what's 3 squared? We know what 3 squared is, right? 3 squared is 9, but you're taking the opposite of 3 squared, which you guessed it, remember that song? This is actually going to give you negative 9 here, right? Because it's saying the opposite of 3 squared, when this is saying the opposite of 3 as a group, and then you want to square that, right? That's the biggest challenge that some 8th graders have when it comes to exponents, right? So go ahead and ask yourself, let me write this right here, go ahead and ask yourself, right? We have a group that's a base, negative 8 squared, versus the opposite of 8 squared. What do you think is the difference between these two things? That's right. If you expand it like we just did, this would be negative 1 times 8 as a group, and then negative 1 times 8 as a group, which is negative 8 times negative 8, which is positive 64. And then you have this, which is saying the opposite of 8 squared, which is what? That's right, negative 64. Right? That's the trickiest part about today's lesson, is that base. If it has parentheses, make sure to keep those parentheses. If it doesn't have parentheses, drop that negative 1 out there, because that's what it means, the opposite of negative 1 times, okay? Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. I'll check you during live block. Finish the Nearpod. Get some at-bats in. Love your faces. See you later.